Hello, this is Don with Focused Healthy Family, and this is podcast number 124. Today I'm doing something a little different. As I try to do throughout the years that we've been doing this, is I try to replay our very first podcast that talks about Gina and I. For those that are new to the podcast, it gives you an idea about us and about what we do and what we're doing with this podcast. It also comes at a time right now when Gina and I are going through some things with getting her parents moved into, her father into memory care and her mother into independent care. So this week has been a week of family time. So it comes at a great time to be able to put this one back out. So I like to put it out periodically through our time that we've been doing this. We've been doing it now for about 3 years. And so this time what we're doing with this podcast, for you that are listening via audio, you will not notice any difference. But those that may be watching this in a video, this was a purely audio podcast. Initially when we started out, we did just audio podcast. And so what I did with this one for the video part of it is I took pieces of video from other things that we've done and overlaid it with the audio of this podcast. So those that are watching it get a chance to see some video of us, but it doesn't necessarily match the wording. So I hope you'll enjoy getting to know us and seeing who we are. And then, of course, next week we'll be back with regular podcasts. So enjoy. This is podcast, again, 124, and we're going back to the beginning. So enjoy.
Welcome to Gina and Don's Focused Healthy Family Podcast. Glad you joined us today for the first episode.
Yeah, we thought we'd share some stories with you to kind of get to know us a little better.
What story can we share so they can get to know us?
We have a lot of stories.
We do. I remember before I moved to Charlotte, I was in Pennsylvania. I had graduated, and I was looking through an occupational therapy magazine as I looked for a job and decided where in the country I would move to. And there was an advertisement that said, "Shouldn't you be in Charlotte?" Little did I know I would move here and meet my soulmate.
That's me, by the way. And we also have the honeymoon story. I mean, that's a story within a couple stories. I got sick, food poisoning, got helicoptered to a hospital. It was a bit of an adventure.
It sure was. And how about how we met? We were at the spaghetti factory for a singles group gathering. And there was a woman sitting at our table who looked at me and said, "Are you here with the group?" And my response was, "No, I'm not really here. I'm a hologram."
That sparked a conversation between us because we both really loved Quantum Leap, and that was a popular show at the time.
You know what story we should talk about? How we took a long car trip with our 6-week-old newborn.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
Across the country.
Well, before we get to the stories, let's take a quick break here because you're listening to Gina and Don on the Focus Healthy Family podcast. Let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. Or you can find a link on the front page of the focusedhealthyfamily.com website.
And stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences.
And we're back. So we're going to tell the story now of our little trip across the world, it seemed like. It felt like.
So when our first child was born, Don was building a business from home, and I took a 12-week maternity leave from my job. I'm an occupational therapist. I was working in a nursing home. And I remember I had a whole list of projects that I wanted to do. I had 12 weeks off from work. This was a big deal, right? I had been working full-time for about 5 years. I didn't really get to any of those projects.
No, because, you remember, though, you would I have 2 hours before he's going to need to feed again, and you'd, run out of the house and, run to do something. It was always really not stressful, but it wore you out. I know that because you were...
Yeah, I only did that a handful of times.
Yeah.
I remember I started a baby book, and I think it had 1 page. I don't even know what became of that. We did do one big undertaking, though. Don's from St. Louis, and I'm from Pennsylvania. At the time, my parents and my brother still lived up in the Allentown, Pennsylvania area. And we used to alternate going to families at the holidays. And we decided we would go visit both of them.
With a 6-month-old, I guess.
6-week.
6-week-old, yes.
He was born November 10th, 1997. And so we decided for Christmas, your family celebrates on Christmas Eve. So we bundled up in the car and made the trek from Charlotte to St. Louis, which is, I think, over 700 miles.
Yes, a good 14-hour drive, something like that.
Yeah, I remember it used to take us far less than having a child. Somehow we had a baby who slept, and we made it all the way out there. And your brother was great. He gave us his bedroom, and we had the Porta crib for him to sleep in. And we spent just a couple days in St. Louis visiting with the family.
But we left on Christmas
Day. We packed up, because I remember we drove then from St. Louis to eastern Pennsylvania.
And trying to find a restaurant.
Yeah, no, we wound up at a Chinese restaurant because that was the only
Some out of Christmas story almost,
The only thing open on Christmas Day.
Fa ra 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 ra.
And we met up with my family, and I think we celebrated the next day with them. Then somehow drove all the way back to Charlotte with this 6-week-old. And looking back on it, it's kind of like, wow, we were crazy. We were young, naive parents. And yet, on that car trip, I remember, I had always dreamed of having several kids. When he was sleeping in the back of the car, he typically did a lot of sleeping in the car. I remember turning to you one time and saying, can't you just wait till there's 3 kids back there and they're fighting and arguing with each other? That's how I grew up. We moved away from my parents and my grandparents when we were young, and 3 kids and making long car trips back to New Jersey. And so I kind of had that vision of what it would be like.
Well, we had station wagon, 3 kids in the back seat, and usually 1 or 2 of us in the you call it way back. It was just a back where you could lay down, and because I can remember falling asleep to the rumble of the tires in the car. But so we took smaller trips when we were kids, but we were all packed in the station wagon.
Yeah, we had the 77 Cutlass Oldsmobile station wagon with a 3rd seat that faced out.
Oh yeah.
Faced the other way, which was fun because when you're traveling, we used to make signs and hold them up to passing cars and keeping ourselves occupied and busy.
We just did the tug, you tug down honk for truckers to honk
their horn.
And I remember one time my dad was like, what, whoa, because he got and he wasn't anticipating that.
Yeah, my sister invented a game called Tornado. And when a big 18-wheeler went by, it was a tornado. And if you didn't duck, your head got chopped off. I don't know if we had a name for smaller trucks or whatever. It was a silly game we played. So here we are, new parents with 1 child sleeping in the back of the car, imagining what life would be like down the road.
And it's kind of like that Nationwide commercial.
I love that commercial.
Life comes at you fast.
Okay, I was thinking of the one where they're driving along and their baby
Oh, yeah.
is in the car seat, and they look back at the baby and they drive along some more, and then they look back and
He's a full grown.
and he's a grown kid in the same baby car seat. I think they might do it in a couple stages, but kind of, that idea, it does happen fast. Our
before we
kids
know
are
it.
now 12, 19, and 23. So that little baby boy is.
And we recently had them all in the car when we were heading up for going, I think, on when we went on vacation. And they did a little bit of arguing, so we got your dream,
Well, we've had many road trips over the past
Yeah.
23 years with lots of different arguing and fighting in the
Yeah.
car. And so that's a piece of our journey.
Yeah, now, we're here with our family. They're slowly, not coming up empty nesters yet, but
As they become
we have
adults and
two
we've
that are away now. And
gone through different stages with them, right? We've gotten past teenage years with 2 children, and our youngest is 12 and a half. I think I calculated how many years we would have teenagers, and it was a very long time, something like
Yes.
17 years or something. The way our kids are spread out, age gap of 11 years between the oldest and the youngest, which always makes me laugh because your mother had 6 kids in 11 years, and I had 3.
Yeah. And so we want to do this podcast to help other families, and using our experiences through all the things we've done. We want to be able to tell some stories,
Sharing our stories, sharing our struggles, our successes, what we found helpful.
Sharing. Hopefully, we'll do some interviews. I mean, I've done another podcast and I've had interviews, and we want to do the same thing with this podcast.
Why don't you tell us about the Invisible Wheelchair podcast?
Well, I started it, and we probably aren't going to go into the story yet about our daughter, but I started a podcast for those that suffer with obsessive compulsive disorder, because we have that within our own family. And other people, any kind of really anxiety, where it's, I call it the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast because these disorders are ones that don't necessarily have a physical sign to them.
Yeah, there's a lot of illnesses like that where looking at the person, they
You would
look
never know.
perfectly
Yeah.
normal, right? Yet they have these challenges or struggles.
And they don't show. And you don't know what's going on inside the mind and what's inside behind closed doors too, so it's invisible. And we kind of felt that way with what we've been through with our kids. So I decided to do a podcast where I give resources and interviews with professionals, with parents, with people that are actually suffering. I've had quite a few of them on there. So in this podcast with the Focus Healthy Family, we are going to try to do the same thing, but really around the whole idea of family.
Yeah, our parenting journey and overcoming different obstacles and resources we found along the way, because what we want is to help other families.
And we know that, even if one is suffering in the family, the whole family really is affected by it.
Right, you can take a child to therapy, yet it's impacting more than just one child. To have any kind of illness with your child, it affects the entire family, their siblings, the parents, anyone who's involved in that household. And it's important to look at that whole family and how to best help everybody.
Well, even in my own family in the past, when I was really young, I lost a sister. I was only 3 at the time. But as I look back on it and I see how it has affected everybody in our family with different things, and not that we're any more dysfunctional, I guess, than any other family, but it has had effect for us all.
Well, and that was back in the 1960s.
Yeah, I know.
And people didn't talk about things. It was, a very different time
Yeah.
period and different way of parenting and different dynamic entirely. Anything, any challenges, even just day-to-day parenting challenges, even if you don't have a child with special needs or any kind of extenuating circumstances, parenting is challenging, right? Kids don't come with instruction manuals. And it's a journey. It's an ongoing journey of figuring out what works, finding your balance, finding what is important to you. It's important to know what your values are and your goals are, and what is it you desire in raising your children. What outcome would you like to see?
We talk about the one child and that long trip, and thinking, we kind of got into a rhythm with that one child. And the second child came along. We thought it would be kind of the same rhythm.
Well, I remember because I went back to work full time when the
Yeah.
oldest was born, and I had changed jobs when the second child came along, and I was only working part time. And I remember you leaving the house. She was, I don't know how many weeks old. And I went, wait a minute, I've got 2 kids to take care of. I have a 4-year-old and a newborn. You only had 1. This is very different.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember being home more. I struggled with accomplishing things at work, very clear objectives.
Yeah.
I had to evaluate a patient. I had to come up with a treatment plan. We did the treatment. I had to document it. I remember making this list of different responsibilities, not just a way of getting things done, but more of a way of like, this is what I'm doing. This is, these are things that are important that need to get done. And I believe I hung it on the refrigerator. And at some point you took it down, I guess clearing things up. And I was so angry at you because it was like you threw away my list that validated me being a mother and my responsibilities at home.
I didn't realize that I was that shocking to you. I apologize.
Yeah, it was stressful because it took some time and effort, and I actually had made it very neatly with columns and drew lines with the ruler.
Yeah.
And as parents, our culture in general does not recognize, how important parenting is. We talk about it, and yet the reality is it takes a lot of time and responsibility to raise kids. It's not just getting them up and out the door to school. There's so much more that goes into things.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's that quote that says, one of the toughest jobs is parenting,
I like the reminder, you're not managing an inconvenience, you're raising a human being. And that's what this is about. Our children are people too.
Yeah, one of the big things we hope to really expound on in this podcast is about respect. It's a big part of what we do in the practice that we do.
And respect is a two-way street, right? To have children who respect us, we in turn need to treat them with respect. And in the coming weeks and months, we're going to share more stories along our journey, and we hope you'll join us.
Yeah, we want to be able to elevate parents, give them a new possible way to look at things and do things.
And hope for when you're struggling with particular issues. If you want to learn more about us,
you simply can go to www.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's focused with an ED, healthyfamily.com.
And we've enjoyed talking with you today and look forward to next time.
Yep, join us for our next podcast. Thanks.
That's our podcast for today. We hope you have enjoyed it. We would love to hear from you. Make sure to leave us a comment. If you like what you heard today, you can learn more about our parent coaching program or join us for our next workshop. Find out at www.focusedhealthyfamily.com and follow us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family. Remember, how you speak to your children shapes their future.